Hello, my name is Barbara Neill Banks, and I'm Vance Neal's daughter, one of four. There are four of us: Willie Hazel McHenry, Vancella Brodus, Eva Linda Gunnings, and Barbara. That's me.
And your mother's name?
My mother's name is Jeanette Mills Neal, and she married my father. She was a daughter in a family of 12 children in Mooresville. And her last sister to pass was Sarah Rawls, also of Mooresville.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you grew up where?
I grew up here, right here, on what is now Judas Road, but in the house next door,
Okay.
251 Judas Road. And I went to school, first school, Middletown School. Second school, when they consolidated the school, was Amity Hill School. And then I went to Unity High School and graduated from Unity High School in 1959. Yeah.
And you went to Nealtown. And this was known as Nealtown then, right?
This area was known as Nealtown back then, yes.
And the reason for that was?
Because the properties that were given to the school and St. Paul Church was given to them by the Neals, since the Neals owned pretty much most of the property in Nealtown.
And they gave them the land after slavery?
Well, they had access to the land, from what I understand from the Neals who owned them, that they were given land even prior to that, and that's why they had so much land. But they did give them additional land after the slavery and what was emancipation and all of that. They gave them an additional, I think, 40 acres, which was the normal amount, 40 acres and a mule.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So they got their 40 acres.
Yes, they did.
Good stuff. So you went to Nealtown. You graduated from Unity.
Yes.
Do you remember Reverend McKenzie by chance?
I don't. I remember the name, but when I saw the paper, I tried to place it, but I couldn't place it. But I do know the name very well. It was a well-known name.
Who were the prominent people you remember growing up outside of your family?
Okay. Outside of my family, I'm trying to think. There were the
Byers. Okay.
Byers, but they're distant related, but they were outstanding family. Mr. Dave Byers had a little grocery store over there on Bell Street, which later my father bought from him. The Byers were very well known. Also, the Youngs were very well known. The Pattersons were very well known, and the Adams were well known too.
Now, the grocery store that your father bought from Mr. Byers, is that the Nealtown grocery store?
That was the Neal grocery store on Bell. It wasn't called Nealtown, it was called Neal's Grocery. And it was on Bell Street.
Okay. How long did you all have that?
Oh my. He had that for a long time. I think I remember him having it from when I was maybe like 12. Because at 13 he made me come work in there.
Oh.
And so I remember he had it for a couple of years before that. And then he had it up until, probably into, I don't know exactly when he got rid of it, because I was gone away to college. He had it when I left to go to schools. So I'm not sure when he got rid of it, really.
You graduated in 69, you said?
I graduated from Unity High School in 1959. And I graduated from Winston-Salem State Nursing School in 1963.
Can I stop you for a second?
Mm-hmm.
When you went to Unity, can you just tell us some of the stories from Unity?
Well, let's see. Stories from Unity. I don't remember many stories from Unity. I was in a class with a lot of very, very people who had a lot of knowledge, and a lot of their study habits were such that they they could pick up on things, and they studied and all this, just like Lenore. I can't think of his first name now. He's a Norman, and he was extremely smart, but he was very, very quiet. So you would never know that he was all this smart, but he really was. Unity High School was noted for having what's called a theatrical club, and I was a member of that theatrical club, and we used to put on plays for the entertainment of the neighborhood and also for the entertainment of the students. And there was a competition always in North Carolina every year, state competition of schools who were putting on plays and doing this type of thing, and they competed against each other. And Unity had the opportunity to go and compete in that arena in, let's see, I graduated in 59, 1958. Okay, and we won second place.
The competition was only black schools?
Only black schools.
Okay.
Only black schools. Yeah.
I was looking in the yearbook. It looked like a lot of the alumni did go to college after graduating.
Yes. Yeah.
That was normal.
That was normal. That was normal. If they completed high school, most of them did go away to college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. What areas do you remember? Did white people come to the plays that you guys put on?
Only in the competitions.
They did come.
In the competitions at the state level. No, not to the local. I don't recall ever seeing them there in local. Yeah.
Would you say that race relations between black and white people growing up before you left for college were positive in Mooresville?
Let me just say this about Mooresville. I may be, and our family may be an exception. When I went away to college in 1959, and they were campaigning, at the Walworth or Woolworth, and to sit at the counter to eat. Well, someone said, "Are you going to join?" And I said, "For what? Why?" They said, "Well, so we can sit at the counters and eat." I said, "What do you mean you can't sit at counters? You can't sit at drugstore counters and eat?" They said, "Where you come from?" Oh, so because we had kids from the north, they said, "Oh, you must be from New Jersey or somewhere." I said, "No, I'm from 60 miles down the road, Mooresville." And they said, "Well, we don't know about Mooresville, but we don't go sit at the." I said, "Well, I do."
In Mooresville?
In Mooresville.
Wow.
In Mooresville. Right there where I try to remember the name of the drugstore, but I can't remember it now. But I would go there because my uncle, Lawrence Thomas, was an assistant to the pharmacist, and his children went there, Nance in L.A. We go there, we sit at the counter, we order our milkshakes, and we blew bubbles in them.
In the 50s?
In the 50s.
Wow.
Nobody ever said that we couldn't do that.
Wow.
So when they were asking me to do this, I'm like, well, what is this? So then I began to learn every place was not like Mooresville. And then someone said, "Well, who's your father?" I said, "Vance Neal's my daddy." "But what is he in Mooresville?" I said, he has a little store.
Right.
He has a baseball team. They said, "Oh, that's because your dad is well known. They know who he is." I said, "Yeah, they know who he is, but I'm not the only one, I don't think, that comes there and sits at that counter." Now that was, I can't remember that drugstore. It's so funny because it was right on Main Street. And what's there now? I can't remember what's there now.
So you said your dad...
Stop for a second. Stop those. I think you need to move right here.
I agree. So you said your father had a baseball team.
Start the question over again.
So you said your father had a baseball team. Was he the coach of that baseball team? Where did they play?
He was the owner of that baseball team. He organized it, and he had a lot of other people that worked with him. One of the guys I remember very older, his age group, was Leon Pfeiffer. Was one of the ones that worked well with him with the baseball team. What my father would do is he would go around and approach the parents of the young boys in Mooresville in the city, and asked if their son could join his baseball team. And if they said yes, then he said, "Well, I will come pick them up, and I will take them, to the games and all this." And he had his own baseball field,
Wow.
right off the Cornelius Road, and that field was where they played when the teams came and played the Mooresville Demon Tigers, which was the name of the team. And it was like maybe like a little park ground or something, because they built a little brick shed that we were under in case it rained, and we sold um, hot dogs, and fish was the main thing. People came from all over to get the fish sandwiches, and that was white and black. White people came to get the fish sandwich. They would always say, "Vance, are y'all gonna have fish over there?" And they would come. He said, "Yeah, we're gonna have fish," and they would come. So it was fish, hot dogs. That was it. No, nothing big. Coleslaw. Oh yes, I remember. I had to grate that cabbage every Saturday morning for those games, and a great big pan of coleslaw to make. So they had to go on the hot dogs, and they had cold drinks, and of course they had beer. Of course they had liquor by the shots because it was Vance Neal's event, and you didn't have too many things without a little alcohol. That was the highlight, I think, for most young people in Mooresville, was to be a part of that baseball team and to play on that team, because Vance was going to take care of them, and the mothers knew that, and the fathers knew that, and he was going to be responsible for them. He bought their uniforms, and we and my mama had to wash them every week. They had to come bring these uniforms in. We had to wash these uniforms, be sure they had clean uniforms. His thing was his boys had to look good. He took them to get their shoes, their cleats, all of that. And then he started to playing teams in the park, in the Statesville Park, and in the Mooresville Park. So they would have games. And in addition to that, my father would add a little spice to it. He had a beauty show, and he would have the black girls in their swimsuits and all marching around. And of course, my mama was one of the judges, and they picked people to be judges, and they would let these girls would be in the, I don't know, they would just, it was something to give the kids in Mooresville something to do and something to look forward to. I'll never forget. Maybe I was about 15 or 16, and I wanted to be in the beauty contest. And my father said, "Well, no, you can't be in the beauty contest." And I said, "What do you mean I can't be in it? Why can't I be in it?" Because I thought, I'd never asked him until I was 16. And he said, "Because you are my daughter, and that's not right. It's my contest. That you don't have your own child in your contest." And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. And so I was kind of hurt by that, but I never got to be in the beauty contest. That was a disappointing thing. But anyway, back to the baseball games. Now, my father would have the teams, and they would go, and he always carried his own scorekeepers and his own people that, to take care of little things with the players. Okay. If he didn't have a scorekeeper, guess who became the scorekeeper? I did. I had to be the scorekeeper. Now, can you imagine, now 14, 15 years old, I'm down in the dugout with all these men, and every team that he played, some of them were old men. They weren't all young. He had probably the youngest baseball team that was around. But anyway, I was the scorekeeper, and with all these old men, and I'm up there in the dugout with all these old people, and I have to keep the scores and all of this. It was a lot of it, but as I think back on it, I'm able to form deep relationships with men because I was exposed to them, others more so than women. I heard their talks. I know what they're saying. I heard how they thought about women and different things. So my opinion of men changed because I knew them, and I was able to have relationships with a lot of men, and understand and talk to them about things, and that has followed me throughout my life. I don't know if it's benefited me, but it has followed me. But anyway, the baseball team was a highlight, not just for my father, but for the city, and it made the young people made the young people feel that they had something to do. And if they had any problems, any issues, they called my daddy and told him, and he would talk to their mothers about, what they were going through, the issues and things that they have. So he really served his community very, very well. And he was recognized by Mooresville, but he refused to go and be recognized. But they did have the mayor of Mooresville. They had a recognition day, and Vance was one of the people that was recognized. But he refused to go, and they had called us, and we all came to go with him. But so Leon Pfeiffer, his dear friend, picked up the award for him for that. Yeah.
Why did he?
Let me drop in real quick. Can you tell us about like one of the games? Like, can you describe a game and some of the players in the games, or some of the highlights of a game, or a couple of games or something?
Okay. His number one player was a young man at that time named Kenneth Caldwell. Kenneth Caldwell was an excellent pitcher. Now, my father tried to get Kenneth introduced to the major leagues, but it didn't work out. When they came to look at Kenneth Caldwell, another young man, I can't think of his first name, his last name was Troutman. What was his name? Plunk Troutman. These were excellent players. Okay, and people came to see them, to just watch them because of how well they played, and he did bring a scout in to see them, and they wanted Plunk Troutman, but he did not have a high school education, and that's how he lost out. But they looked at him seriously, and at that time Kenneth Caldwell was too young. He shouldn't even have been playing. He was too young for them, but they wanted Plunk Troutman. But as I said, because he didn't have a high school diploma, he was turned down. Yeah.
Now, when you say major leagues, do you mean the major leagues? Or
yes, the scouts came. My father was able to make contact with people because he went so many different places. They used to play in Maiden and Hickory, and he would go all around playing any other black teams that were in the area. Yeah.
You said he was recognized by Mooresville. That's modern day. But how was his relationship with the elected officials then?
He had a good relationship with them. They all knew Vance. My father was a bootlegger, and he was considered the biggest bootlegger in Iredell County. Okay, and because he was that, when holiday season came, the sheriff and everybody in Mooresville would call Vance and say, Vance, do you think we can get a gallon of liquor? And he said, I don't know why you calling me about a gallon of liquor. I don't sell liquor. And they would both have a laugh about that. And he said, you know where to put it for me, Vance, and I'll put your money there. And that was that. So that he had a relationship with everybody.
Wow.
Yeah, and they knew him, and they knew him to be an honest man, hardworking man, and also a religious man, churchgoer, all of that. Superintendent of the Sunday school at St. Paul Methodist Church, there every Sunday morning teaching the Bible to people. That was my father. Yeah. And anybody needed anything. If you went to the bank and you needed a loan, they may say no, but then they'd ask you if you were black, you know Vance Neal? And if you said yes, you said, why don't you call Vance and tell him what you want and see if he'll come out here and sign for you. And he would. But he would make sure, okay, now you got to pay this. You have to pay this. And they did. They paid it because Vance put his name out there for them. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that your family may have been the exception, like sitting at the counter or whatnot. Do you remember any of the areas that you weren't able to enter through the front door, or you had to enter through a side door or a back door?
I don't, because I didn't go anywhere but to that drugstore. I didn't go anyplace else, in downtown Mooresville. Just the shopping, but everybody went in through the front door of the shopping areas. And the only other places I went were the black establishments. I think Mr. Carr had one, and down the street was the hot dog, Mr. What's his name? Terry Graham's place. Was his name Terry? 4-6 Diner. That was it, the 4-6 Diner, because that was the hangout for black people there.
Mm.
And the other one, Mr. Cars, was up the street on the right, and I'm trying to think what it was called, but he sold beer, and that was a big hangout there. Yeah, because after the games, my father would take the guys in there sometimes for beers, those that were, could drink. Yeah.
And let me throw this out there real quick. Can you say your father's name and what made him successful, or what made him um, a figure in Mooresville?
His name was Vance Neal. I don't know what made him a figure in Mooresville. I guess Vance Neal was a very strange person. He told you just like it was. He didn't care if you were white or black or whatever. He had as many white friends as he had black. Okay, and they came and they pitched horseshoes in the back. At a period of time, he worked for the mill and he worked the night shift. And he would get off, and all his buddies, they would all come with him, white and black. And they're going to drink until 11 o'clock or so, and then they're all going to go home and go to bed. That was just the way it was. If he got upset with somebody, he didn't care whether you were black or white. He's going to cuss you out and get off his property. He's going to pull his gun out, and you better go. And then maybe 2 days later, you say, Vance, they come by and say, Vance, you all right? He said, yeah, come on, you're okay. But, he was real. He was real. And how he felt, he let you know. It didn't matter who you were. He let you know. Yeah.
And what were some of the things that your father was able to accomplish?
Well, I don't know that he was able to accomplish very much. His whole thing was that young people needed to have basic education. He was big on that. In fact, the whole Neal family was big on education. They wanted everybody to at least finish high school. He thought that was really important. The other thing, he thought that if you had a skill and you knew how to do something, you need to pursue that skill. It doesn't mean that you have to go to college. Maybe it meant that you took a job with a company that was going to help you and further your skill. That's just the way he was. He just didn't think that people should be doing nothing and getting checks. Now, I'm going to tell you something. My father was a Republican. Okay? And I'm going to tell you why he would tell you he's a Republican. He always said that the Democrats come in and they want to give you something. He said, that's slavery. And you ain't done nothing for it. Republicans are going to demand that you do something for the money. And that's why he supported the Republican Party.
So earlier you had mentioned the store.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us how your father was able to acquire the store? And what's one of your first memories of going to the store?
My father bought the store from Mr. Byers. Mr. Byers was getting old and he didn't want to. He was going to close it, and he asked Daddy if he wanted it. First, my dad said no. My mom said, no, we didn't. We're not going to do that. But then he decided he would take it because if you knew the store and where it was really essential for people in that particular area. Because at that time, I'm trying to think how many grocery stores was in Mo. I don't think there was two. Harris Teeter, and there was another one up on Main. I think was it A&P? I don't remember, but there were only 2 grocery stores, okay, in the Mooresville area. And that little store, he basically just carried things that people needed during the week to get through, to feed their children. A lot of canned goods, a lot of canned meats, mackerel and salmon and those kinds of things, crackers and bologna and, things that people needed. Of course, he sold cigarettes. That was a big deal. Everybody came to get the cigarettes. And a lot of things for kids, little penny candies and and all that kind of stuff. But the most nutritional things were canned goods. He really specialized in having canned goods so that these women down there could feed their children. At least they could open up a can and make some salmon cakes and some mackerel patties, and they could open up some cans of vegetables, beans, and whatever, and feed their children. And that's why he opted to take the store in the first place. Now, in the back of the store, Mr. Byers had a little like a juke joint, I guess, back in the day. But he didn't use that. My aunt used to come on Friday nights and Saturday nights, and she would sell hot dogs, and they played a piccolo, and people would dance. So there was some entertainment and stuff that went in there too, but only on Saturday nights did they do that. But people came in and played the little piccolo all the time. I mean, all during the day. Now that's what I remember. For my first thing about the store when I first saw it was, this. What is this mess? What is this? Because a store to me had, lots of space and lots of stuff, and you walk around and shop. And then when I saw all these little the shelves on the wall and all these cans, I was not impressed. I'm just gonna tell you, I wasn't impressed. But anyway, he asked me to come work in the store, and then when I came to work in the store, I realized that the store was really necessary for the community. It really was. He sold sodas and stuff like that, milk and things that for the people to keep the people nourished, as best he could in their neighborhood until they got someone to take them to the Harris Teeter or the A&P, Yeah.
You got something? Stop real quick. We got a couple more questions.
I got one that
So your father bought a school. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, when the Middletown School was consolidated with Amity, the property went up for sale, and my father bought the school because to him it meant it was a family-like thing, family history. So he bought the school, and he had a friend who later on he had it for a couple of years. It was just sitting there, nothing was going on. So he had a friend who had a family, and they didn't have any place to stay. They were living on a sharecrop type of thing, and so he let him buy the school from him to turn it into a home for him and his family and his children. So I think he must have been there a couple of years or so, but then he made a little money, and so he wanted to build another house in a different location, he was going to buy another house. It was already there in a different location. So he sold it. Now, he didn't come back to Vance and say, I'm going to sell the school, do you want to buy it back? When my father found out he had sold the school, he was out. He was just so upset, and especially when he found out he sold it to a white man. Because his thing is, this is history. This is my family's history. Now, I can understand. He said, I understand. It wasn't your history. It didn't mean anything to you. But it meant something to me and my family. And he tried to buy it back. Of course, they wasn't selling it back to him. Yeah. So he was very, very disturbed and very upset about that. Now, my father and my mother bought 13 acres of land where the baseball diamond was some years after that. And when he bought that land, it was the dump for the Cascade Mills. It was all hollows and all of that. And that's where they would dump their, yarn and threads and things. If it didn't work out, you run in the spin, and then it gets all this. I guess the design goes off or something. Okay, well then they would just throw that away, and they would just take it over and dump it and put it in the dump. Okay, so but he bought the land, and 13 acres. He paid cash for it, and he and my mother were trying to figure out what they're going to do. That's when they decided, okay, we need to clear this land off, and we need to do something with it. Well, their first thought was they was going to build a little cafe, a little thing. Because my mom at one time, before she married my dad, had her own little cafe, something in Mooresville, But that was their thought. Then when he started clearing the land, he thought that we'll make a park. And of course they agreed, well, that ain't gonna be no money in a park. We got to do something here with the park. So that's when they decided that he would clear the land, he would make the baseball field. And he did all that on his own. He hired people, and they put up the fence, and they did all that, and then they built a little stand out back for for selling refreshment, and then they put the pit up for frying the fish in the big what you call them, iron pots. And they had, so it was like a little wash kettle pot. Then that's when they got that idea, and they started that business. And it started on Easter Monday.
Mm-hmm.
There were every Easter Monday, everybody knew that the park was going to be open. They were going they were going to play baseball somewhere, and we're going to go there and we're going to get fried fish and all. So it was an outing for people on Easter Monday. Okay. And so then he would just arrange games, call and get teams, but they weren't always there every Saturday, because some Saturdays they had to travel to play other teams in their locations. So it wasn't an every Saturday thing. It was usually about 2 Saturdays out of the month. Yeah.
And let me ask you this: do you see a difference in Mooresville and with black people from the time that your father was doing his thing to right now?
What do you mean a difference?
Well, being active, doing things within the community, involvement in the community. It just seems that your father was making a lot happen in the name of the community. Are you seeing that now with people?
Now, I can't rightfully answer that, and I'll tell you why. I've been away from here since 1963, and I came back for a brief period in 97, and I've just been back here since 2019. And I really have not. And then we had the COVID, and so I have not been able to observe what is going on in Mooresville now, to be perfectly honest with you. I do know that at one time there were a lot of people. I remember Larry Cornelius came back and opened a club on Main Street in Mooresville. He was reaching out and doing things in the community, and then I guess he sold it and went back, came back to Maryland. But I don't know what has happened recently, and I can't address what's happening now. I really can't.
Well, it's
I have a question though. So
Yeah.
in terms of the baseball, do you have any pictures of the baseball field? Anything that shows what happened at that field?
I really don't. I have looked for, and I called my sister, and she's looked. Eva was the one who kept all these things, and I'm not, and she doesn't know where they are at this point. I do know there were pictures of the Mooresville Demon Tigers that was in the Mooresville Tribune a couple of times, and my father had that picture, but I don't know where it is now. But that was really of the team. We didn't take many pictures of the baseball field. I don't know there was anything to take pictures of. We didn't. I don't think we took many pictures there. I might have seen maybe a couple that my aunt might have taken when they come to visit from up north. They might take a picture or something, but we didn't really take any pictures of that.
So if you could you take a note that we can ask? They said they had put in a bunch of years of the Tribune. They can look for the title of
the demon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a question we have to ask them, because they have that record. They did put that in.
I have one question. What you said you was in healthcare. Back when you were younger, what was healthcare like here? What we're trying to do is see if we can see back then, or are we still trying to cross that bridge today with healthcare?
Now, healthcare, in what sense?
Back when you were younger, how was
Well, when I was younger, living here.
yes.
Yes. Well, I don't remember us having very much. We had our own private physician. That we went to. My mother and father both had the same. No, I take that back. One had Dr. Sloan, one had Dr. Skeen. Yeah, but anyway, we had our own private physicians, and we saw them on a regular basis. The hospital at that time was called Lawrence Hospital, and Lawrence Hospital was a segregated hospital. They had the black ward, and whites, and they weren't mixed together. I was never in the hospital. My father was in the hospital a couple of times when I was young, because one time he was shot, and he went to the hospital, was in the hospital for that. And another time, I think he was stabbed, and he was in the hospital for that. And those are things that were in. They were in the Moore. It wasn't called the Tribune then; it was called something else. But it was in the Mooresville paper, the big write-up about Vance and whatever. And then, then I was very young then. But healthcare uh, was something that was available, but I don't know that I really knew that much about the healthcare in this area. Now, when I came back here in 1993, the healthcare to me was inferior to the healthcare that I was used to in providing. Now, I worked out of Charlotte and I managed homes for persons with developmental disabilities. And when I came here from that same company in Maryland, and they had the main office was in Ohio. So when I came here for that job, I was the nurse that was responsible for the health care of the residents at all the homes, and there were 7 homes. There was a concern because the young man who was the manager of the entire facility wanted to know why I was making so much money. Why I was making? I said, "What do you mean? Why I'm making so much money?" I didn't know what he was making. I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, I only make $5,000 more than you do." I said, "Well, you didn't come from the office I came from." I said, "They cut my salary $13,000 to come here, and I accepted that." I said, "But I wasn't accepting anything less, and so they wanted me to have the job, so they gave me the job." Now, I don't have a problem, I don't have anything to do with how they pay you. Well, you see, I'm coming from Washington, D.C. I'm managing homes in Washington, D.C., and this is Charlotte, North Carolina. There's no comparison in the cost of living at that time, So, of course, they have to pay you according to what the rate is for paying a registered nurse to do this type of work. But anyway, so I saw, let me just say this about that experience. It was a major experience for me because I looked at and got to work with young black people who accepted things without questioning. And that bothered me. That bothers me about North Carolina today. We've had a very difficult time here, my sisters and I, because we question everything. And we've been in court systems, Iredell County court system. We've been there at least 15 times about the care of my sister, about everything, about the property, about this, about that. Because they don't understand that we question. You know why we question? Vance Neal taught us to question. Question these people about what they're doing. And so that's what we do. And that's what I see that in North Carolina can't deal. Well, Iredell County, I want to say, can't deal with that. And especially black women questioning you. They don't want, they can't take that. Because number one, they don't have the answers. And they don't know, and they're trying to figure out why you know all of this. Okay? And so it becomes an issue right away. Yeah.
All right, if we can, let's stop these. I got a couple more questions.
I don't know how I got over there, I guess.
Sleep.
Okay, as far as the housing situation in Mooresville, I really don't have a lot of information about that because most of the people that I knew really owned their own properties. The only incident that I know about was someone who lived out in this area who bought the school from my dad because he was in a sharecropping situation. Now, I'm not sure what I'm not sure what the sharecropping situation was then. I guess they provided you with a home and some place to stay, and you work their land as in repay. And then when you crops come to harvest, you get a certain portion of the funds. So when this gentleman bought the land from my dad, he was living in a sharecropping situation, and he was trying to get out of it, I guess, because he didn't have a job, and his children were grown, pretty much, and they were not going to be doing, you know, work on the farm anymore. So that was the only incident that I can recall about housing, because I think the housing in Mooresville uh, was a city type of thing. The city controlled pretty much those the housing, and but most of the people that we knew owned their own properties. Well, most of the people that my father knew and that we grew up with, they all owned their own properties. Like the Byers, they owned their own property. The Youngs, they owned their own property. There wasn't very many people that I knew that didn't own their own property, even though it was in the city. Yeah.
Any instances of segregation that you recall or that affected you or your family?
Well, yeah, here's the key. When I grew up and I was growing up, I was 6 and going to school, and my closest friend was a young lady whose parents had the farm in back of us, and she and I played together every single day, and we were talking about going to school. We were so excited we were going to school. And when she and I, well, she found out first that we weren't going to the same school, and her mom had the hardest time trying to explain that, and she was crying. She came to me. She said, "We're not going to go to school together." I said, "What are you talking about?" Because I hadn't even dealt with that, and because I'm like, "Yeah, we're going to school together." She said, "No, we're not." My mom said, "No, black people can't go to the same school that the white people go to." Well, that was a shock to me, because see, I hadn't even faced that, because everybody around here was white. And my my playmates were white. So you just automatically think that you're going to go to school with them when they say going to school when you're 6 years old. You know, you're just going to school, and you're going to school with your friends. Well, my father had explained to me that I would not be going. He took me and showed me where Middletown School was, and this is school I was going to be going to and all that. But in the interim time, my grandmother, Essie Neal, was a woman who walked this entire countryside all the way to Bell's Cross Road. Her friends were in Bell's Cross Road. She just get up in the morning and get her stuff together, and she's going to Bell's Cross Road. And she'd walk to Bell's Cross Road and walk back. Her friends, Mrs. Cornelius, who lived in the big house on Cornelius there, she, Mrs. Mills, who lived in the big house over on the other part of Cornelius Road, Miss Rankin, who lived right up here in this house here. Those were her closest friends. She saw them every day. They ordered patterns. They would meet together and decide who's going to order the pattern to make this dress, that dress. Okay, you order the pattern, and I'm going to cut it out in newspaper, and then okay, and we all going to have the pattern. Okay. Now she was the only black woman in that circle, because other friends, black friends, were all the way up in Bell's Cross Road. So one day, I was at the Mills family home, and normally at the Mills family home, if they're having meals, I would sit at the table, the end table, by the mom, right at the end of the table, because there were a lot of them. Well, this day, 2 extra people, the oldest son had come home. He'd been in the military, and he was there, and his wife. Well, there was no room for me to sit at the table, right? You can't get but so many people around the table. So they made me this little table, and they put it over by the family table by the window. My grandmother came, and I was sitting at that table. She went off. She lost it. I never seen my grandmother upset. She grabbed me up from that table, and she said, "She'll never be here again." And Mrs. Mills was so hurt. You could see the hurt in her eyes. She said, "But Essie, there was no room. You see, all of us are here. We hardly have room for the family." That was the only incident that I really experienced. Not me, because I didn't see nothing wrong with it. I'm a child, you know, it ain't no room at the table. What are you talking about? And But my grandmother was really very upset. It's the first time I didn't go play with Rhea, and Rhea was upset for at least a month. They had to work that out, but then they did. They worked it out, you know. And but that was my only time that I've ever felt. Oh no, the Iredell County Fairs. That was another one. We would all, you see, because we were all together all the time. We make plans. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And then it come. Black people only had, I think, one night. I can't remember that they went, that they were allowed to go to the county fair. I'm not sure they had. I don't know. It might have been more than one. But there was one night, you know. I don't think you could go just any time. And so I would always, they would take me to the county fair. And I don't remember why people did. Maybe they were. I don't remember. But I just remember that my friends would go at one time and I couldn't go when they went. But I did everything else with them, but I couldn't do that with them. I couldn't go to the county fair with them, couldn't go to school with them, you know. Yeah. So when I went to school in Middletown School, a lot of I didn't know the people that were in the school. I didn't really know them, and I got to know them later on in life, and especially and then when we were moved to consolidated the schools and we went to Amity, then I got to know more and more people, you know. But basically, I didn't have a lot of friends. I had the ones that I went to church with, and you know, you only see them once a week. But the people I saw every day, and the people my grandmother took me with her to see, unless we walked the Bells Cross Road. And I don't think I was that energetic back then to walk the Bells Cross Road, but yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
She's answered it. I'm curious though. So you went to Middletown School. Your last name's Neal. Was Neal. Is Neal. But you didn't know the people at Middletown School. How is that?
I didn't know the people at Middletown School. You know, like I knew the people in my neighborhood. I knew them. You know, I'd seen them. In fact, the teacher at the time that I went to school was living right down the road here in my uncle's property, because she came from a different area, so she was living in that house. I didn't really know them. You know, like I didn't play with them. I hadn't seen them. A lot of them I hadn't seen. Now some of them I had. The Normans, yes, because the Normans were our cousins, and you know, and I knew them. But far as most of the people in the school, I didn't know. And you have to remember too, I was an only child. For 9 years, I was the only child. Yeah. Even though Willie Hazel, my sister, was born, she didn't live with us. She lived with her mother in Troutman. You see, so I was, yeah.
That's good.
Well, thank you.
Sure, can I ask a question? Cut it off.
Leave with this off.
And if the school, does it still exist?
Middletown School no longer exists. No, there's what's on that property now? I think there's a development on that property. It's right on Cornelius Road. It's St. Paul Church is on the right.
Oh, I know where the church.
And the school was on the left. I think there's a development there on the left side of that. Yeah.
So you had just mentioned your father in the bus. Can you just tell us a story about your father driving the bus?
There isn't really. He was just the bus driver for the school, for Middletown School. He drove the bus up until, I think he might have drove the bus up until they consolidated the schools, which was when I was in about the 4th grade. I think they consolidated the schools.
Consolidated with.
I was trying to think of the name of the schools that went to Amity. Troutman, Middletown, Troutman. What other schools?
Probably Elmwood.
The little school that was in Shenville. And the school that was in, it was another one. Who else was there?
Amity Hill.
We're talking about Amity Hill, the consolidation of the schools that went to Amity Hill. Do you know? I'm not pretty sure on all the schools that were put there. I just knew that Troutman, Nealtown, Troutman, and there was another one over there where it was. What's that? Harmony?
No, it's not Harmony.
I don't know. It's where the Turners live. Was that called Harmony? No, that wasn't Harmony. Where did the Turners live? I don't remember, but I remember it was in was it Elmwood? I don't know the schools. I don't remember the schools that were consolidated. I really don't.
So this is just from my understanding because I've asked this before.
We good.